Do you remember when Apple only made dedicated devices for music? Well, boom! This is the iPod Touch 6th generation, and let's talk about it in 2025. I remember in Target, when you walked through the Apple section, you could find like 100 of these in different colors, ready to purchase and ready to buy. But here in 2025, obviously these have been discontinued because there's no point of even the iPod Touch existing anymore. Devices are often fun to look at because this was like one of my favorite childhood devices ever, and it really got me into the Apple ecosystem. And pretty much this device was launched in 2015, and I used this as like my main type of device up until my dad gave me a Microsoft Windows phone.
This fucking sucks, actually.
But it was sort of an upgrade from this because at least that one had a phone line on it. I mean, you can't get a phone line on the iPod Touch, to be fair. First thing I want to talk about is the exterior of this iPod Touch 6th generation. First of all, you'll notice that this is extremely tiny. Like, this is probably one of the most tiniest products that Apple has ever created or launched in the past couple of years, I would say. So as we noticed, this is actually one of the last devices that Apple launched that had white bezels on it. And I honestly think it looks amazing, especially with this blue. I think it really matches it aesthetically. And if you actually notice, this blue color might seem a little familiar because guess what? It kind of reminds me of the iPad 10th generation blue color too. But outside of that, we get a rear front facing camera and a 4-inch Retina display. That's kind of interesting. Don't know why Apple did that, but I mean, it is a Retina display and it's 4 inches. So, you can watch videos and movies on a very tiny display with great quality. And then underneath that, we just get a basic home button. There's no Touch ID added to this. Now on the back, you're getting a basic 1080p camera, flashlight, and I'm pretty sure this is a sensor right here. Correct me if I'm wrong, editor. And then on the bottom, you're getting a speaker grill, lightning cable, and guess what? Everybody's favorite, the headphone jack. In terms of any specs worth highlighting, keep in mind, this thing is extremely underpowered because guess what? It was a dedicated music device. It didn't really need the most powerfulest chip, but it had an A8 and 1 gigabyte of RAM. And I really think what the iPod Touch honestly matured into is a really good device for younger children whose parents didn't want to buy them an iPhone, but still wanted them to have a reasonable device that doesn't suck. The iPod Touch 6th generation first came out, it launched with iOS 8.4, but then it was upgraded to its final upgrade, which is iOS 12.5.3, which is the version that my device is actually running. To be fair, iOS 12.5.3 looks perfectly fine in my opinion. You really can't tell any difference between these iOS generations. I mean, unless you take a look at the control center, but other than that, they do look pretty similar and alike. Now, obviously, you can't get widgets and stuff on this device, but with jailbreaking, that type of stuff is possible, but that's not what this video is about. Damn it! Now, other than that, the experience on this device is kind of normal in 2025. I mean, you can still use a majority of the apps on the iPod Touch 6th generation. It's just the quality is really gonna suck. And I feel like the biggest example of this is the cameras. Now, this is an iPod Touch, so I'm not gonna go,
well, deep dive into the camera. Oh, we can't record 4K.
But there actually is only 2 recording formats that this iPod Touch supports. And it's 1080p 30 or 720p 30, which they both look extremely crappy. But to be fair, it is the iPod Touch 6th generation that we're judging right here. But when it comes to using other social media apps on this device, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of those apps still work on here. Some time, but I mean, at least they work. And you can still receive FaceTime calls and messages on this device too, which is kind of weird picking up a FaceTime call from an iPod Touch 6th generation, but I guess you should just know that it works. And then when it comes to minor stuff like AirDrop, that also works too. But there is one thing about this iPod Touch 6th generation that I should let you know. The battery life on mine absolutely sucks. I mean, to be fair, I haven't had a battery replacement ever since I first bought it, and it is a decade old at this point, so I don't know what I'm expecting. And yeah, it does get hot due to the battery being very trashy and crappy. But then other than that, the only other thing that I did notice is for some reason, sometimes I noticed that the iOS apps and some of the other stuff was jittering a little bit. I don't know what that is from. Maybe somebody down below can tell me in the comments. And that, the device actually works perfectly fine considering, it's a decade old. But my main reason for making this video is because honestly, it's kind of fun to look back on when Apple actually did fun stuff with devices like the iPod Touch 6th generation. And even though it is outdated, the iPod Touch is a staple in technology. And if we look back on it, the iPhone really wouldn't exist without this device existing either. So anyways, let me know what you guys enjoyed or if you disliked this video. But if you did dislike it, you can still, leave a comment, help the algorithm. But outside of that, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.